Well, I'll go ahead and begin this afternoon with a little bit more talking about this belonging and not belonging. And what I want to do is I'm going to talk more about the ways that we separate. And the ways that we separate, in case you want to put it into a language that you're familiar in as the Buddha talked about it, you could say that the ways that we separate is the same as the ways we identify with the sense of self. As soon as we create a I, a me, a sense of self, then inherently in that, we're creating a me here and an other out there. And there's so many different ways that we do this in the stories we tell and the identities and the roles and the ways that we just the ways that we navigate the world, thinking that this identification with the sense of self will somehow bring us more security, more ability to plan. And it's in many ways, it keeps us from what we want most deeply, which is to feel our connection, to feel that we are in a world that we can relax and have ease in because we belong there. So I want to talk in some more detail about some of these separating tendencies of mind that we bring in, some specifics around that. And so a really simple way, and some of these other ones will just be variations on that, is just a feeling that we're different, that somehow I'm different than other people. And it's interesting. Of course, we're different. We're all different. And I can tell you from, at least from my seat, talking to many people and stuff, we're also amazingly similar. So it's sort of like, which side are you going to look at? Are you going to look at the difference and the uniqueness and then make a story of separation about it? Or are you willing to allow for there to be a lot of uniqueness within a matrix of similarity and connection? One of the ways that the difference, though, can show up for us, that it makes it a little more complicated, is if our sense of integrity is different from those around us. So if our sense of being different can have some ease in it if we feel like we're in integrity with ourselves. And so we feel aligned with a general sense of kindness and skillfulness, but it doesn't make it easy. And sometimes we sacrifice sometimes a sense of belonging as we do that. I'm thinking of some things like if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, and that feels like a right place of integrity for you. And then you are, or you eat differently in some way. So the interesting thing is, are you going to just allow that personal alignment with how you are, or are you going to create a story out of it that is either better than or less than? And in creating the superior and the inferior and the comparing, then you start to create the separation of not belonging. Can you feel that you can just be in alignment here and not separate? But when you start comparing, then the separation really falls into place. So there can be uniqueness, or there can be the comparing that actually separates. Sometimes another way we can separate that is if we're in, because I've heard a lot of people talk about this as they begin to practice and the practice deepens, and they realize that they feel uncomfortable when they're around people who are saying things that are mean or unskillful about other people, that they start losing interest in the sort of gossiping that is not very nice. And for a lot of people, that's challenging. How do you navigate that territory with people that you're familiar with? Or maybe it's, your family says things that are unkind about certain groups of people because that's their history. And you don't carry that belief anymore. And how to stay in integrity with your own understanding and with your own kindness while still feeling like you're connected. And that can be a little bit challenging, for sure. And one of the things that I keep pointing to is a belief we have that we have to be the same to belong, that our beliefs have to be the same, that we have to have the same opinion about things. And this is very much how peer pressure works, tribalism, a kind of, if I'm the same as you, then I can be here. And it's a very interesting thing to allow ourselves to have our unique expression, especially when that unique expression is necessary for us because it lines up with our own integrity, and to not use that as a separating. It can also go the other way. The Buddha was pointed to our efforts to belong, and he didn't use that wording, but what he was talking about is how easily influenced we are by all the people around us, really pointing to our permeability, the fact that we are constantly in relationship with our environment. And he said, like if you hang out, and he said, if you hang out in bars, you're going to end up drinking, and he said, if you hang out with gamblers, you're going to end up gambling. And he goes on to sort of describe that you're going to behave like the environment that you hang out in. And this is why you've probably heard him say the famous sutta where Ananda says, oh, the half of the holy life is being with wise friends. And the Buddha says, no, 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 the whole of the holy life is being with wise friends. And this is a recognition of how permeable we are and influenced, and that even though we have some idea of separation, we have an idea that, oh, I am in my own little cocoon here, but really, we are so permeable and influenced that our choices about who we're around, what the environment is, that makes a really big difference, because we can't hold up. He says, if you hang out long enough in the bar, you're going to end up drinking, or wherever it is. And so this is a different aspect, a different way of addressing that, the belonging, that it's not only that we want to belong, but that we already are so permeable and belong so much to whatever environment we're in, that we mesh and correlate and are influenced and influence that. So the idea that we are separated from our environment is an artificial version, and an artificial idea that we have to drop. in order to both be at ease and to make skillful decisions. I'm sort of bringing in here, I want to just diverge for a moment and talk about two ideas that that the Buddha talked about, which are, the words are hiri and ottappa. And the translations are sort of like personal sense of integrity and a sense of integrity and care about the community. And it's quite, in a lot of places in Asia, like in Thailand, there'll be two guardians at the door of the temple. And one is hiri, representation, either a human or an animal representation of the idea of hiri, and the other is of ottappa, because these two things are viewed as guardians of the world, that they are what allow us to be in community and with others with integrity. So the one is a little bit like what I was relating to before, is this aligning with our own integrity, our own conscience. We use the word conscious, it's a lot in our language. To align with our own conscience, to do what you know is right, to speak kindly, to not kill, to not take what isn't yours. This is where the precepts, to align with that in yourself. And we're really getting in there to the territory of the bliss of blamelessness. And I'll say more tomorrow about this, but just a precursor, that the bliss of blamelessness is one of the things that allows us to belong. Because if we are out of sync with ourselves, with our own integrity, we feel uncomfortable where we sit. So the hiri helps us. This is the conscience that keeps us in integrity here. And ottappa keeps us in relationship to our environment, to the people around us. It is that we care what other people think about us. So this is an interesting thing, that we care that other people might think that we're doing an unwise thing. So let's see. Here's a silly example that I can remember from many decades ago. But I sort of went through the period of time where there were bulk food bins, right, in the store, and there'd be like chocolate almonds in the bulk store, and you go by, and I remember when they first started doing it in bulk that way, and it's like, yeah, I think I better taste one of those chocolate almonds just to make sure it's okay before I buy that. And you take one, and in the first, if you're not very conscious, which I think I qualified at that time, you don't even think about it. You're just like, yeah, I'll just take one. And then at some point you start having some conscience that, oh, I would be uncomfortable if somebody saw me do this. And you start like checking to make sure nobody's looking when you take your little almond from the bin. And what you're having there is an experience of ottappa that you haven't like integrated it in here, but you do recognize that it's like the world around you is helping you provide conscience. And so this is actually a very skillful aspect of our being, that we care that other people think well of us. And then, right, eventually you figure out that the sign above it that says no sampling actually applies to you. And that and then you come into your own integrity and you realize, oh, this is not offered. And I would not be comfortable taking one of these. So there's I see it a little bit as a progression there as we get closer and closer to alignment with ourselves. So I bring this up because sometimes the more we're aligned and we recognize whether something is skillful or not skillful, whether it's wholesome or not, then we can have the experience of that integrity. And it doesn't separate us. We don't, whether it's the same as people around us or different from people around us, no longer is the deciding factor on whether we do something. The internal compass is there, and the sense of self doesn't have to manifest to do it. It just comes natural as alignment with our basic goodness. So it becomes that the integrity becomes supported whether or not, that the sense of belonging and the story of that can help support it initially and eventually is independent of it as we become aligned with ourselves. The belonging, often one of the challenges with this is where the internal and the external come into conflict, and there isn't necessarily a right or a wrong or a wholesome or an unskillful or unwholesome. I'm thinking of things like when a parent wants their offspring to be in a certain way or to do something in a particular way or to be a certain person. And as the offspring, you really might care about your parent, of course, and you want them to be happy with you and you want to do but it doesn't align with you. And so there can be a lot of confusion in resulting from that. Is my belonging dependent on my pleasing someone? And that's a truth in our world, is that sometimes people insist that we please them in order to belong. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so sometimes we do have to make a choice. If our values change from those around us, we often can feel a sense of falling out of belonging with that group of people. I remember spending time, a practitioner who was a young man who was a musician, and he loved making music, and he had a whole group of friends and a band, and they made music together, and that was a big important part of his life. And as he made choices that he didn't want to drink in the way that some of us may have drunk in our early 20s, that wasn't in alignment with him anymore. And it was very difficult. Does that mean because we play in bars that I have to give up the music too? Can I have the music without the drinking? And it's understandable. I don't think there's an answer, but it's really good I don't think there's a simple answer, but it's easy to get into confusion with this as we pursue the very innate desire to belong and to stay in alignment with our integrity, and to not give up our integrity because we belong. And that actually doesn't work. Have you ever noticed that, like, if you're trying to be like the people around you in order to belong, that you end up just feeling more and more uncomfortable because it's not who you are? There was a TED Talk that a woman gave. Megan Phelps Roper was her name, talking about growing up in um, a group of people who had very, very strong views about people that were different, very bigoted views, as she felt later on. And that, from very young age, she would be standing on street corners holding the signs. And it was interesting, her assessment as she came out of that, realizing that the causes and conditions around her and her desire to belong to that, the only thing she knew, it was actually the religion was included in it, that it kept her there. And it was the kindness of strangers who started talking to her about her beliefs and gave her an alternate possibility, that she started to be able to come into alignment with her own recognition, like this being mean to certain people because of their sexual orientation or their gender identity, and that this is not this does not feel right in me. But it came from, but she could really feel how the wanting to belong kept her there for so long. And yet all of this the Buddha talked about it as in another way. I'm talking about belonging, but he talked about praise and blame as one of the vicissitudes. There were 8 worldly vicissitudes. And these are the things that come and go: gain and loss, fame and disrepute, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. They're always oscillating. It just keeps changing. And we get confused by this and think that if we do things in some particular way, that we're going to be able to control the situation, that we're going to be able to, like, get everybody to like us all the time. I don't know about you, but how I can tell you how that's gone for me. But, each of us get to discover for ourselves that no matter what we do, somebody's not going to like it. It's just the way it is. That's where we're different. We have different causes and conditions. People are going to have different views. And if we spend all our energy trying to control, thinking that if we do that, we will belong, that we'll be okay, that we'll be safe, that if we can just control all these conditions. And can you feel how we're pointing here to the fundamental teaching that the Buddha talked about, that we cannot control all the conditions outside of us. What we can do is see our own minds. We can feel our own heart. We can be here. And this is where I started this morning, saying the belonging is here. If we're looking outside for it, and especially if we think we're going to get it by being the same as those outside us, we're on an endless path that isn't going to lead us where we want to go. I'll tell you one other little story that I had a little insight into this when I was quite young. I was, I think, like 5th or 6th grade or something. And I went to somebody invited me to come to a Girl Scout troop. And okay, I went a few times, and I felt really outside of the group. It didn't feel like anybody really wanted to talk to me. It didn't seem like this was a place where people were friendly or if it was going to go okay. And so, I felt uncomfortable, was really clear I didn't belong, stopped going. And then I went to, somebody else invited me to come to a different Girl Scout group. And I went to this other Girl Scout group. And the first day I was there, they were voting like patrol leaders or something like that. I didn't stay in Girl Scouts very long, so I don't remember all the details of it, but they were like voting like for little pod leaders. And it was my first day there. And somehow people decided that they liked me and they like voted me to be like in some position of leadership. And I remember, instead of being like excited or pleased about it, being completely confused because I was the same person in both of these situations. Neither group of people really knew me at all, certainly, a few times or one time. And it was completely their story of I didn't know what that made them respond in these different ways. And we get caught in the feedback, in this praise and blame we get from the outside. And occasionally we have something like I just described, where we see so clearly that it has nothing to do with us. It's everybody in their own world. And we're just sort of there like, okay, this is which way the paint's flying now. And the Buddha was kept saying again and again in so many ways, the worldly winds will come and blow. And how are you going to stand steady in the midst of that? How are you going to find and understand that you deeply belong to this world and your belonging is not dependent on what other people think, or that you're the same as other people, or that you do it according to somebody else's rules? So I think I'll just end right now by reading a great little poem by Mark Nepo called Thinking Like a Butterfly. Monday, I was told I was good. I felt relieved. Tuesday, I was ignored. I felt invisible. Wednesday, I was snapped at. I began to doubt myself. On Thursday, I was rejected. Now I was afraid. On Saturday, I was thanked for being me. My soul relaxed. On Sunday, I was left alone till the part of me that can't be influenced grew tired of submitting and resisting. Monday, I was told I was good. By Tuesday, I got off the wheel. If only it would only take 1 week, but we can, feel this way. This is what I really would like to sort of offer you this weekend, is this possibility that you already belong and that you're not dependent on this whimsical day of the week. You don't need to make yourself into something else to find that ease and security and sense of safety, that it is already inherent in you. So let's go ahead and sit together. You have about half an hour to sit for this sit. And I'll lead a little bit, but it'll mostly be a silent sit. So letting your system relax, feeling the body, noticing if there's any places of tension. And letting your sense of the ground beneath you be very clear. See if you can have the sense almost as if your attention could go down into the earth, like growing roots. Growing roots into the earth that gives you a steadiness. Feel the earth below you, its density, its solidity, its abundance as well, spreading out in all directions, going down into all four directions. Let yourself connect into that. Let yourself feel that you too are of this earth. You can just take a moment here and feel like even the hardness of your teeth. You can sense the solidity of your body, perhaps checking in and feeling the skeleton you are made of, this earth that is here. And let yourself feel this earth sitting on earth. Let yourself rest into this. You are part of the earth. You could never be separated from it. You come from it, you will return to it. And even now, while you walk and move around, you're just earth that has legs temporarily, moves around a bit. But it's still earth. And this wonderful miracle that you are a part of the earth, like many other parts, that can breathe. The earth is breathing. Let yourself enjoy sitting here, sitting like a mountain, and breathing. The simplicity, the quiet of just another breath.